It's Tuesday, May the 14th, 2019. It's 8:30 a.m. It's my pleasure to call to order today's meeting of the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. Ms. Bohannon, would you please call the roll?
Dennis Bridges.
Here.
Robert Davis.
Here.
Jeff Duffer.
Here.
Clark McKinney.
Here.
Charles Rahm. Robert Shackelford. Mr. President, 4 out of the 6 members are present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon. To review and adopt the meeting for the agenda.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first by Mr. McKinney, and we have a second by Mr. Davis. Next on the agenda, we have the review and approve the February the 12th, 2019 board meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Dennis Bridges. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have the next item would be the review and approve March the 12th, 2019 board meeting minutes. We have a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Bridges. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. McKinney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Duffer, if you could skip the next 2 items on the agenda for just a few minutes and come back and get those later, we'd appreciate it. Legal is checking on something for us.
Okay, no problem. We'll move over to the director's report. Mr. Gribble.
Mr. President and board members, first on the agenda today we have the legislative update. What we have on this report is actually the bills that passed during this part of the session of the General Assembly, which is House Bill 0048, Senate Bill 0856. It was enacted April 18, 2019. It's Public Chapter 161. That is there behind for you to see exactly what Public Chapter 161 does. It's behind the first page of the legislative update report. Also, Senate Bill 0432 and House Bill 0967 was signed by the governor on May the 10th. That has to do with the cremation fee of $25 for a refund for those who are operators of crematory facilities who provide free services for the cremation of human remains. Don't have a public chapter assigned to that one yet. The next one is House Bill 0304 and Senate Bill 0384, which is enacted effective July 1, 2019, and that's Public Chapter 195. Next one is Senate Bill 602, House Bill 0785, enacted effective dates 5/2 for rulemaking, and the other provisions are effective July 1, 2019, and that's Public Chapter 247. And last on the list today is House Bill 0650, Senate Bill 1173, which was signed by the governor on May the 10th, and that allows the owner of a prearrangement insurance policy and not just the beneficiary to irrevocably assign the policy or policy benefits to a funeral establishment that has not been assigned a public chapter yet either. But that is our legislative report for today. Licensee reports. A report of licenses administratively approved by the Executive Director pursuant to Board authority for the period of March 12, 2019 through May 13, 2019. You have a list of establishments there. Most of those were because of ownership changes. One name change who put in a crematory, so they changed the name of their establishment, and some individuals there who were licensed.
Mr. Gribble, on the individual licenses on Harrison Edward Ashley, the funeral director is down twice. Is that supposed to be funeral director and Balmer or just funeral director?
Just be funeral director.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What happened that when we were doing it the first time, that carried over to another page, and that's just a typo. Thank you for pointing that out. But he has only received a funeral director license. That was all he received.
Thank you.
Closed establishment report. There are 2 establishments that reported closing since the last board meeting. Bartlett Funeral Home Incorporated is 5803 Stage Road in Bartlett, Tennessee, and Scales Funeral Home Incorporated at 1412 Jefferson Street here in Nashville. Action reports. A report of consent orders have been administratively accepted and approved by the Executive Director pursuant to Board authority and as reported on the February 2019 and March 2019 Regulatory Board's disciplinary action reports. Those are listed there for you to see as well. Here. And last, for my part, would be the complaint report. And as of yesterday, May 13, 2019, there were 21 complaints opened against funeral directors and or embalmers, and 22 against establishments for a total of 43 complaints. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, that completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Gribble.
Make a motion to approve director's report.
We have a motion by Mr. McKinney to approve. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Davis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. On to the agenda, with the agenda, new business.
There are no individuals or establishments to appear before you today. And the new business, on your iPad is a letter from the Kentucky Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers that we received on April the 9th that was addressed to me regarding licensure reciprocity. And what the Kentucky Board is asking about says that it has come to the attention of the Kentucky Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors that there presently does not exist the ability for reciprocity of licensure between Kentucky and Tennessee licensees of our respective boards. And we routinely issue license by reciprocity to people who are licensed in Kentucky and Kentucky residents. Now, what they may be talking about, but it's not what they said, they may be talking about a courtesy card. Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana issue what's called a courtesy card. And back at the time, we being the Tennessee Board, were invited to participate in that. At that time, the chair of the board was from Chattanooga. He attended 2 meetings, and this has been probably back 7 or 8 years ago. And because of all the states at Tennessee border, he came back and reported to the board that he thought it was best that we continue to issue license by reciprocity and not consider courtesy cards. And legal could tell us, but it's my understanding that we don't even have statutory authority to issue any type of courtesy card, that would require legislation if it was something the board wanted to think about or pursue. Wanted to make you aware of the correspondence, and I was going to ask you if it's okay that if I write back to the board and let them know that, yes, we do accept applications on a regular basis and approve them from Kentucky licensees, and we'll be glad to continue to do so. Is that?
I have a motion to allow Mr. Gribble to go ahead and respond as requested.
I'll do that. That's perfectly fine. And might want to note in there that we still don't have any intention of doing the courtesy card thing if that's what they're trying to get at.
Is that a motion, Mr. McKinney?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Bridges. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Gribble. The next...
One other thing that I don't have on the agenda is, wanted to let you know that Mr. David Shannon is here with us today. He has been hired as a Regulatory Board Field Representative 2. He'll be mainly doing inspections in East Tennessee, but will do some inspections in Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee. He is from Wartburg, Tennessee, and he has comes to us well qualified, and we're looking forward to him working with us. He's been working now for just the past couple of weeks or so, and is in training and doing some things here in the office as well, and been out in the field with Mr. Bozeman, Mr. Kesey, and will continue to do that for a period of time before he starts on his own. But before long, he'll be doing inspections mainly in the Eastern Grand Division of the state. So I wanted to make you aware of that, and to for him to be here today so he could observe a board meeting and understand kind of how that happened.
Congratulations, sir. Welcome. Anything else, Mr. Gribble?
No, sir, that's all. Thank you.
The last two items, I'm going to recuse myself, and Mr. McKinney, if you will chair the meeting, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's time now for the legal report. If Miss Ashley Van Klein is ready.
Right. So our first three items on the legal report today are should be considered together. The first one is complaint number 2019-005-191 against a funeral director. Complaint number 2019-005-211 against an embalmer, and the last one be complaint number 2019-005-171 against an establishment. All three entities have some disciplinary history. This is a consumer complaint alleging issues with the funeral services provided by the respondents. Specifically, the consumers alleged the following issues. 1. They were told by employees of the establishment that the casket the deceased specified before passing could be ordered and an adjustment could be made to the package that was purchased to allow for the difference in price, but no adjustment was made, and the respondent funeral director/embalmer told them no exception would be made on the casket. A. The respondent funeral director/embalmer explained that prior to the arrangement conference, she pulled a picture from a casket catalog to show the family at the conference to confirm the casket that would be ordered. However, when she showed the family the picture, she was informed that while that was the casket chosen during the pre-arrangement, they did not like the gold hardware and wanted to swap it. The respondent funeral director/embalmer indicated that after some discussion and at the family's request, she contacted the casket manufacturer to see if they had a white casket with silver hardware in stock. She recalled that she was able to make that special order in order to accommodate the request. B. As for the price issue, the respondent funeral director/embalmer indicated that the common practice would be to charge the difference between the two caskets if the prearrangement casket was changed to a different price casket. 2, and this is back to the issues the consumers alleged. The respondent funeral director/embalmer left a family friend waiting in the hallway of the establishment with the deceased things for almost 45 minutes. 3, their meeting with the respondent funeral director/embalmer lasted 6 hours, despite the fact that the deceased had pre-planned her arrangements in detail. The respondent funeral director/embalmer denied the meeting lasted that long. She did, however, admit that the establishment was having technical difficulties on the day of the meeting, and that the casket process did take some time. 4, when the consumer left the establishment after the meeting, the respondent funeral director/embalmer called them back and purportedly stated, "I was not finished with you, and you did not have my permission to leave. I wasn't done." The respondent funeral director/embalmer admits that she contacted the consumers after they left, but denies making this statement. She indicated she called to explain there was still paperwork for the deceased's husband to sign. 5, the deceased obituary directed mourners and flowers/gifts to the wrong place. The consumers claim the respondent would not accept delivery of flowers, even though it was their error that resulted in the flowers being sent to the establishment instead of the church. The respondent funeral director / embalmer stated that she had no recollection or knowledge of that issue. 6, the deceased footstone was not placed in a timely manner. The footstone has since been installed, and the respondent establishment refunded the price to the consumer. And the final consumer complaint was that there were issues with engraving on the deceased headstone, but the headstone has now since been engraved. In general response to the complaint, the respondent establishment indicated that when it spoke with the consumers in December 2018, the only issue raised was in regard to the foot marker. The respondent establishment also indicated that the respondent funeral director / embalmer is no longer employed with it. This matter was sent for an investigation, at which time both consumers indicated they considered the matter to be closed. The deceased husband requested to withdraw his complaint and requested his complaint against the establishment be closed. He indicated that the manager of the establishment was able to resolve all issues he had. Legal's recommendation here would be to close the complaint against the funeral director / embalmer and also close the complaint against the establishment.
Motion to accept the recommendation.
I have a motion by Mr. Bridges and a second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next item on the legal report is item number 4. This is complaint number 2019-003391 against an establishment with some disciplinary history. Complaint filed alleging an employee of the respondent establishment has been visiting nursing homes in the area and passing out his business cards to residents. The complaint also alleges the employee indicated he was an employee of the nursing home. In support of the complainant provided a copy of the employee's business card and the history and staff portion of the establishment's website, where the employee is listed as a family service funeral assistant. The employee, however, indicated that while he does volunteer at the nursing home, he does not pass out business cards or act as a representative of the establishment while there. He also indicated that he has never claimed to be an employee of the nursing home. In support, a letter was provided from the activity director of the nursing home stating that the employee has never been seen soliciting any type of business at the nursing home, nor has he ever been seen handing out business cards. Respondent's employee has never been heard stating he's an employee or chaplain for this business. Legal would recommend closing this complaint.
Was this filed by a consumer or another funeral establishment?
I believe it was filed by a competitor.
Thank you.
Motion to accept recommendation.
I have a motion by Mr. Bridges and a second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next 2 items, 5 and 6, will be considered together. The first is complaint number 2019-01-4821 against a funeral director, and complaint number 2019-01-4831 against an embalmer. The embalmer license has no disciplinary history, and there is some disciplinary history on the funeral director license. This is a complaint from an apprentice funeral director alleging he has been unable to contact the respondent, his sponsor, to sign his quarterly report. The apprentice alleged he attempted to contact the respondent several times without success. He even went to the respondent's home but got no answer. After this, he contacted the sheriff's department to do a welfare check. In response, the respondent indicated he was the manager of an establishment where the apprentice was serving his apprenticeship, but he had not worked there since January 2nd, 2019, and had lost contact with the establishment. He is no longer manager. He also indicated that he would be meeting with the apprentice in March so he could sign the quarterly report. But as of May 7th, 2019, the board office has not received the report. Legal would recommend authorization for a formal hearing and authorization for a civil penalty in the amount of $250 to be reduced to a letter of warning, provided that a properly completed quarterly report of apprentice training is received by the board office within 30 days.
Has this apprentice changed his supervisor since this other one doesn't work there anymore, or was that his last quarter?
He has changed it.
Thank you.
What period of time the quarterly report covered?
It was while the funeral director embalmer was still employed as the manager of the funeral home. I can't remember. Anna may remember the exact time period.
It's covering October through December of 2018. Or yes, 2018.
Well, the funeral director was actually supervising the apprentice during that period.
Yes.
Okay.
I understand this correctly, he's filing his apprenticeship quarterly report a year late.
What happened, Mr. Bridges, it was for October, November, and December 2018. He's been trying since the end of December 31st to get the director, who was his sponsor, to sign off as the sponsor on his quarterly report, and he has failed to do that. After a period of time, the complaint was opened or filed by the apprentice, counted as a last resort to try to get the report signed so he could get credit for his apprenticeship.
Actually, about a quarter late turning it in, I guess. Is that be?
He filed within 90 days after the completion, 60 days after the completion, so it should have been filed March 1st or 2nd, somewhere along in there. The apprentice has contacted us and told us, I would file it, but it's not signed, so I know you won't accept it because it's not filed. The apprentice has contacted us multiple times about the situation.
Spoken with the sponsor at any time, Mr. Gribble?
I have not personally. He responded to the complaint saying that he would sign it in March.
Yeah, that's correct. He indicated that he would be meeting with the apprentice in March so he could sign the quarterly report, but as I stated, the board office still doesn't have that report.
I think that's fair. Maybe maybe the $250 will get his attention for him to put his signature on the form so the apprentice can at least see.
Accept the recommendation.
Have a motion by Mr. Bridges
Second.
and second by Mr. Davis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
The next items 7 and 8, should be considered together. The first is complaint number 2019-022-781 against an establishment with some disciplinary history. Complaint number 2019-022-831 against a funeral director with some disciplinary history. A routine examination of the respondent establishment revealed the following. 1. Issues with the GPL, including 1. The high-end range on the CPL was not consistent with the high-end range on the GPL, and 2. There were 2 prices quoted under immediate burial with casket provided by purchaser. And 2. The respondent funeral director's license expired on January 31st, 2019. Despite this, he served in the capacity of manager of the establishment. There were also 2 statements of funeral goods and service contracts written by the establishment during that expiration period. In response, the respondent indicated upon realization of the license lapse, the respondent funeral director was relieved of management duties until the license was renewed. According to the field representative who did the examination, the corrections to the GPL were made on site. So legal would recommend authorization for a formal hearing and authorization of a civil penalty in the amount of $750 against the establishment, and authorization for a formal hearing and authorization of a civil penalty in an amount of $500 against the funeral director.
When the routine examination occurred?
I do. Let me double check to make sure I get the date correct.
Is this a reoccurring issue with them?
It is, and the inspection report was dated March 12th, 2019. As you can see in the disciplinary history, specifically under the disciplinary history for 2017, both of the establishment and the funeral director were cited for a license expiration issue.
They didn't give in the response, the reason for the non-renewal or late renewal.
They just stated that they mistakenly forgot to renew before expiration.
Oh, how long this establishment has been licensed?
I do not know that.
Is it an old establishment, or is it one that's a new establishment and maybe they don't?
It's been
Understand.
licensed for a period of time, 10 or more years at least.
Have a motion or any further questions for Ms. Van Klein?
Accept legal's recommendation.
We have a motion from Mr. Davis
Second.
and a second by Mr. Bridges. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next item on the legal report is item number 9. This is complaint number 20141 against an establishment with no disciplinary history. A routine examination of the respondent establishment revealed the following. 1. The casket price range listed on the GPL was incorrect when compared to the price of the caskets on the CPL, the upper price range. A, 2 caskets in the casket selection room were not included on the CPL, and B, 2 caskets were on display in the casket selection room, but neither had a price available. And 2, some employees indicated that the manager of the establishment had some health issues and was not serving in the capacity of manager. In response, the respondent establishment indicated, 1, the GPL has been corrected. It mistakenly used an old template when updating the price list in January of 2019. 2, the respondent explained that the 2 caskets that were not included on the CPL were caskets purchased for families and that they are being removed from the showroom. 3, the respondent accepted fault for the caskets without a price and explained neither casket had been opened yet. One of the 2 caskets still had plastic halfway covering it. And 4, after the examination, it sent in a change of manager form to the board office. The respondent establishment explained it was reluctant to remove the manager because of hopes of her returning to a full-time status. Legal would recommend a letter of warning here.
I see they haven't had any disciplinary problems in the past also.
Accept, please.
Have a motion by Mr. Bridges and a second by Mr. Davis. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The final item on the legal report is item number 10, which is complaint number 2019-024601. This is an unlicensed establishment with no disciplinary history. On March 22, 2019, a board field representative traveled to the respondent's location where he observed and photographed signage placed on the building indicating, quote, funeral and cremation services, close quote. By March 25, 2019, the signage had been removed. On that same date, the board field representative met with the respondent's owner. The owner informed the representative that he removed the signage. The representative explained to the owner that he had also observed a Facebook page for the respondent that also appeared to be a violation. In response, the respondent indicated the sign was placed for reference purposes so it could get everything lined up between the two lights and for a reference from the main and side highways so that it could be determined what the sign looked like from the road and whether it would need to be moved up or be moved upon final installation after it receives an establishment license. The respondent explained the owner did not have a chance to remove the sign as quickly as he had hoped, but the sign was removed 2 days before the owner met with the board field representative. The respondent indicates all signage for the location will remain off the building and property until it receives an establishment license. The respondent apologized for this mistake. Legal would recommend a letter of warning.
They gotten their establishment license yet?
They have not made an application yet.
To accept recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Bridges and a second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And I didn't slip up and call you Miss Gino not once.
Thank you.
We've also had a name change since our last meeting. And next is a litigation update by Ms. Pam Spicer. Good morning.
Good morning. This is on the Tommy North matter in Watson North Funeral Home. You all may know this matter was set to be heard today, but given circumstances beyond probably anyone's control, we had to ask for another continuance. However, while the judge granted the continuance, she said no further continuances would be granted for any reason, and it's set to be heard by you at the July meeting, which I believe would be July the 9th. I also wanted to update you just on the status of the litigation as far as where we are. We have been in discovery. We have taken multiple depositions in which Mr. Gribble has attended with me. The deposition of Mr. North has been taken, as well as all but 2 of the witnesses. There are issues with a couple of the witnesses. One witness, who I won't name, has actually withdrawn his affidavit. And then there's one outstanding witness that has had family emergencies when that person's deposition was scheduled, and we were unable to depose that individual. We are still working to figure out if we still need to depose that individual, and if so, when, and that will obviously occur before the hearing if necessary, and opposing counsel is aware if that deposition doesn't occur, that will not be grounds for continuance, because that was contained within the motion when there was a filing to continue it. So the judge is aware of all the facts and took all those facts into consideration when granting the continuance. I do also want to let the board know that we are discussing settlement terms. I have been working with Mr. Gribble on that and would like your authority to continue to do that. Obviously, since this meeting is subject to the Open Meetings Act and is live stream, I don't want to discuss the settlement terms at this point, but I have been working with Mr. Gribble and opposing counsel, and we're hoping that at the June meeting I will have something to present to you for you to consider approving as settlement of the entire case. And I'm happy to answer any questions within reason that you have about the case or the settlement, but it would be tough for me to discuss the settlement today.
If you could, in words that you can use, maybe not only for the benefit of the board, but for the benefit of consumers or anyone that may be watching this live stream, can you explain why that this case has taken almost 2 years after we did a summary suspension, which was an emergency action?
Yes. As the board knows, it was in July 2017 that the summary suspension was issued. The notice of hearing and charges was filed in December 2017, which is within a reasonable amount of time from the time the summary suspension was issued. There was an initial hearing date, which there was a request for continuance based on witnesses being unavailable. There were also new complaints filed in January 2018. Based on the nature of those complaints and their relationship to the original complaint, another continuance was requested because it was in the best interest for everyone for the matters to be heard all together. So an amended notice of hearing and charges was filed to include the issues that were presented in the new complaints that were obviously not known to us at the time of the summary suspension. As far as the timeline, we then had a witness that was charged and convicted of theft, which posed some issues with the case. And then, as you all know, that probably gets us to about a year and a half. Then the matter was set to be heard today and continued basically because of issues with witnesses. The issue with this case, both parties are aware, this case is very testimony specific. So without witnesses, there will be obviously an issue with the proof, and I'm not telling you anything that opposing counsel doesn't already know. We have tried to work together and with the judge in getting the matter resolved, but it has taken some time on both sides. As you may recall, the last time I gave you an update, Mr. North actually had a back issue and had been in the hospital and was unable to be deposed within the time frame that he needed to be deposed in order for us to have the hearing. So that was yet another reason that this matter was continued. It's now come to my attention today that Mr. North is back in the hospital. I don't have all the details, but he's back in the hospital again. I know from his deposition that he was having an issue with one of his eyes, and I do not know if that's why he's in the hospital or not, but I did hear from his attorney this morning because I was hoping to be able to present a settlement this morning. Even if we didn't have all the details, I was hoping to be able to share something with you as far as settlement, but I'm unable to do so because his attorney has not been able to discuss it with his client yet, the full details of the settlement.
Thank you.
And again, I hope to have something in June to discuss as far as more concrete terms of the settlement, and if not, we're set for July 9th at 10 a.m., and there will not be any more continuances granted by the court and opposing counsel as well as his client in the department. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I think I'll turn the chair back over to our president, Mr. Duffer.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Do we have a motion on the table for adjournment?
So move.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. McKinney. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.